Okay, so welcome. Before commencing, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the many lands on which we meet today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I also extend my respects to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us here today. Today's guest is the lovely Rachel Givney. She's a filmmaker and a writer, and she's originally from Sydney, Australia. Her TV drama credits include Offspring, McLeod's Daughters, and All Saints. And as a big Offspring, McLeod's Daughters fan, I'm just like, oh my gosh, you wrote those stories. As well as writing and filmmaking, Rachel's claims to fame include balancing 10 $1 coins on her elbow. Not sure if you've got $10 there to show us that. And spending 14 hours at a Singapore airport without using the bathroom. Totally get that. Rachel spends at least 13.2 hours every day thinking about stories, which is really great because she has brought us 2 novels as a result, Jane in Love, and the one that she's very, very newly released is called Secrets My Father Kept. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for that lovely welcome. Lovely to be here. So I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about what the book's about and what inspired me to write it. And then if anyone had any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. So the novel's called Secrets My Father Kept, and it's set in Krakow, Poland in 1939. As Hitler prepares to invade, an inquisitive and intelligent young woman tries to find her missing mother, who disappeared 15 years ago. Standing in her way is her father, who refuses to talk about what happened. As Marie, the young woman, finally uncovers the secret of what happened to her mother, she must decide whether she's going to reveal it, because it will change her life and her father's life forever. And this is all happening as World War II is looming. There are German tanks going up and down the border. There are planes flying overhead. And Marie, the young woman, is desperately trying to find her mother in time before the Germans invade. Secrets My Father Kept is a coming-of-age story on her journey to find her mother, the heroine, Marie. She discovers how the world works, really. She encounters racism and sexism, and she falls in love. And she discovers the lengths that people will go to protect their family, really. To research this novel, I travelled throughout Poland multiple times to research it. This was before lockdown, when we were still allowed to travel. I went to Krakow, where the novel is set, Warsaw, Lvov in present-day Ukraine, some former Prussian towns where people still speak German there, Auschwitz concentration camp, Zakopane, which is a beautiful mountain resort on the border with Slovakia. I also visited the Jewish Holocaust Centre in Elsternwick in Melbourne and listened to survivor stories. Poland was about 30% Jewish at the time, before World War II broke out. I had a Jewish consultant read the novel several times and give me wonderful feedback. I've also been learning Polish for 2 years to research the novel. It's wonderfully complex language, and Polish people they have a wonderful culture of showing kindness and hospitality to strangers, and I've really been welcomed with open arms by the Polish community of Melbourne, which has been wonderful. My Polish teacher read the novel a few times and served as a consultant on the novel as well. I also, in my research, uncovered a centuries-old tradition that women still practice in Eastern Europe, which I can't reveal as it will spoil the ending. But this beautiful but sad custom plays a crucial role in the main storyline. So that's secrets my father kept, and that's what inspired me to write in my research. And I'd love to answer any questions that anyone might have.
So thank you. Yes, I have read the book, and I enjoyed it immensely. And I'm very conscious of not giving spoilers, because this is a book that has intrigue on a number of different levels. And you did mention that your research played a huge part in that, but also there was the medical and the pharmacy information that I don't think you mentioned in that
No,
little
I
spiel.
didn't.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, so Marie, the heroine, she is looking for her mother, and she's 17 when the novel begins. And at the same time, she has a dream of becoming a doctor, like her father. When the novel opens, her father, Dominic, who is this very secretive man who refuses to talk about what happened to her, Marie's mother. He's a doctor in town and he's very well respected. When the novel begins, he saves a young boy's life by giving him a rudimentary version of penicillin, which he's basically sort of created himself in a backyard lab. Penicillin was the first antibiotic. Antibiotics were just being invented in the 1930s, just being developed. And so Marie wants to become a doctor like her father, but she encounters tremendous opposition from society towards following her dream. And as she goes on through the novel looking for her mother, she realizes that, and we see scenes of her mother when her mother was younger, and we see that her mother was also a brilliant chemist before she disappeared, and with a brilliant mind. And Marie realizes that she has inherited this brilliant mind from her mother. But she encounters tremendous opposition from becoming a doctor or entering the medical field. She tries to enroll in university, and the admissions officer basically tells her there's no way we're going to waste a place on a woman who's just going to leave the profession in a few years to start a family. And I come from a medical I come from a medical family. My mother and father are both doctors. My brother is training to be a doctor. I've got a sister who's a midwife, another who's got a medical science degree. So I come from a long line of doctors and nurses. It was very important to me to get the medical scenes right, and it's a fascinating time in history. Like I said before, this is when antibiotics are coming to the forefront when antibiotics are being developed. I think the statistic is before antibiotics were developed, bacterial infections killed about 1 billion people. And ever since antibiotics have been invented, they have saved about 1 billion lives. So they're sort of on balance now. We've balanced it out with the antibiotics. So that was very fascinating for me to research and to write about.
And it was also to the responses from sort of the old school doctors in response to that treatment, or the new innovative treatment, that they weren't quite on board with it.
No, that's right. So this is, bacteria, you can't see it. And I mean, you can see even these days with coronavirus, you can't see it. So it's people are suspicious. People are suspicious of the treatments. and people are suspicious of the virus itself. You know, some people say, oh, it's all a scam, or this is, you know, it's not really real, or and so this was a new technology which was being developed. And if you think about it, antibiotics or penicillin is mold. It's usually sort of ordinary kitchen mold that might grow on bread, or it might grow on a bit of old meat that's been left out. And so this penicillin mold is actually been developed and turned into a product, really, that kills bacteria. And yes, so it's a fascinating time in history.
And it's a very important part of the storyline as well.
Yes.
Now, we did have a question that came through about your research. It was, during your research, did you stumble upon any little known World War II fact?
One thing that really fascinated me was a lot of Polish people didn't think Hitler was going to invade. The threat was looming, but they really, really didn't think he was going to, and really, really hoped he wasn't going to. And very few people in Poland and in the world really predicted the Holocaust. And if you think about it, how could you predict such a horrendous tragedy? But nobody thought that Hitler was going to do that. So that was very fascinating, and that it was my Polish teacher who showed me that. His parents were alive in World War II, and that was the consensus. Nobody really thought it was going to happen. And then when Hitler invaded, and then of course Hitler went to war with Russia as well, Poland was just destroyed. The Russians came from the east, and the Germans came from the west, and they just decimated the country, which is very sad for Polish people. And it was and Poland didn't really have anything to do with it. It was sort of like they were hosting a war between these two huge powers, and they didn't want to have anything to do with it.
They were just stuck in the middle there with these big powers coming through.
Exactly.
And you really notice that in the portrayal of your characters. It's just kind of like, it's like us going down, oh, coronavirus isn't going to kill you. Oh, yes, it is. It's not. And, you know, it's all a conspiracy theory. That's what the impression that you get as you go through the book of, is it really happening? Oh no, we've left it too late,
Yes.
And then you've got the character putting her sandbags out every single morning, which is quite interesting to see that she had the faith in her own little idea of what was going to happen. So with Marie's father, it's a very interesting character. How did you develop his persona? Like, he's very uptight, I think would be the word.
Yes, he is. He's very uptight, and so I just wrote him with as a person who's carrying a secret. And so if you're carrying a secret, you're carrying this burden around with you your whole life. In everything that you do, you know that if this secret is revealed, your life is over, essentially, as you know it. So this is how Dominic is. Every day that he goes to work, he focuses on his work, and he enjoys his work very much, but he's always makes sure never to get too close to anybody. So he doesn't have any friends, even though he's not a boring person or an annoying person. He's just very, very guarded. And that made him very enjoyable to write, because in every situation, he's always going to have a very sort of shut down way of interacting with other people. However, he's still a human being. He still craves conversation and friendship and love, but he constantly prevents himself from experiencing those things because it's too risky.
It certainly is. And Ben is Marie's love interest, and we don't get to see an awful lot of Ben, but
No.
what we do see, I kind of liked. How did you choose him as a match for Marie?
Well, Marie is a very, she has a brilliant mind, but she can be reckless and she can have very headstrong attitudes. She's a teenager. She's 17 when the novel begins. And Marie is feet first with everything. If she sees something, she goes for it. And Ben is a very steady and gentle character with a very kind heart, but he also has sort of hidden passions. We see him at one point sing a Jewish hymn, and it's very beautiful. And Marie she's already in love with him, but falls in love with him even more there. So he's this sort of lovely steadying presence for her, and she'll really do anything for him.
Yeah, it's lovely to see with all of the stuff that's going on in the background. There's this beautiful little calm love story and beautiful wedding and stuff. So there is fairy tales in your book. Well, one fairy tale in particular, but did you study fairy tales in general before you wrote the book, or was that an interest of yours?
Yes. So, talking before about how medicine was incredibly interesting at this time, fairy tales were really interesting for Europeans at this time. In about sort of the late 1800s, the Brothers Grimm come out with their famous book of Grimm's fairy tales. And these are all largely fairy tales from the German past, from the German folklore. And this book is snapped up, ironically, by German patriots and German nationalists as a way to sort of look back and celebrate their culture. But it had a nefarious angle to it. These were people who were saying, look at how wonderful the German race is. Look at how clever, and look at what a strong culture and a strong history we have. So in essence, the fairy tales became this weapon for celebrating German culture, but in quite a violent, aggressive way. And once Grimm's fairy tales became quite famous, other countries and other sort of, I guess, right-wing, patriotic, nationalistic sort of forces in those countries started to look for their own fairy tales. What Polish fairy tales do we have? What French fairy tales do we have? What fairy tales do we have to show evidence of how great our race is? So in the book, Marie's looking for fairy tales because it's the one memory she has of her mother, and of her mother reading to her a fairy tale. So she goes to the library, tries to find this fairy tale. She thinks, if I can find this fairy tale, maybe it will give me a clue of where she is or what happened to her. And she sees in the borrowing slip that a lot of sort of racist people from the town have been borrowing this fairy tale book, which is quite curious to her. No, it's a fascinating. Fairy tales fascinate me because they're always so dark and violent, and they do say a lot of things about sort of the collective unconscious of a particular culture. So so it was great to put a couple of fairy tales in there because, like I said, it was a big thing. It was a big thing at the time in the 1930s.
And speaking of the 1930s, why set it in that particular time period? Because there's a lot of books which are based around the Holocaust and, during World War II, but this is actually just a very snippet in time just before all of that happened.
Yes. This is... it's a very interesting time. The 1930s is a very interesting time for women. With World War II, Women are thrown into the workforce en masse. And it's the first time that lots and lots of women are in the workforce because they have to. We needed women to work in the armaments factories, to do the maths on the Enigma machine. And so these women are thrown into the workforce. And for the first time, women en masse understand the dignity that comes with earning a wage. And once women have a taste for working, they never go back. World War II is the beginning of the great feminist movements of the 20th century. So I found this a very, very interesting time for women. And so this is set just before that time. And so the attitude is still that women and a woman pursuing a career is an absurd notion. It's not something that is readily accepted in society. So I wrote it just on the cusp of this time. And like I said before, it's a coming of age story. So this is Marie, this young woman, discovering how the world works. So she discovers that the world can be a sexist place. The world can be a very racist place. The sort of themes of sort of gender and identity and are really coming to the forefront in Europe. So I thought it was a perfect place to set this kind of novel.
And it's very unique. I don't think I've read anything that's set just in that little time frame and in that area as well too. We had another question about your writing process. So what does your writing process look like? Is it different writing for novels than for TV series? And what's the best and worst things about writing?
So that's a great question. So writing for TV and writing for novels, the main difference that I've found is when you're writing a novel, you need to set the scene for the reader in a way that you don't need to do for a screenplay. So you need to give the reader all the sensory information. Do you need to describe what something looks like, what it feels like, what it tastes like, what it smells like, because there's nothing else for the reader to go on. It's just the words. So you need to be able to set the scene for the reader. You also need to show what the characters' thoughts, what their internal monologue is doing. And whereas with a screenplay, all of those things, what something looks like, smells like, feels like, tastes like, all of that is going to be accomplished by the actors through their performance, by the production and set design, by the wardrobe, by the camera angles, by the editing, and by the sound. So you're required to put in a lot less sensory information for the viewer when you're doing TV or film. When it comes to actually the pros and cons, when you're writing a TV show, it's usually 5 or 6 writers, and you get into a room and you've got a whiteboard and you sit around a table and you nut out what's going to happen over a series, over one season of the TV show, essentially. Then once you've worked out sort of the bullet points of everything that's going to happen in the series, then you go off individually and you each write maybe 1 or 2 episodes each in that season. And then you all come back and you read each other's scripts and you give notes, and the producer will give notes, the network will give feedback. So it's a very collegiate process. It's very fun. It's very stressful. There's very tight deadlines, but it's a lot of fun because you're always interacting with other people and you're always collaborating with other people. The downside of that is you're not writing your own characters. You're not writing your own storylines. You're essentially writing what you are being told to write. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because hopefully you're working on a good TV show or a good movie. And so the characters are great and the storylines are great anyway. But if you have the misfortune to be working on a show that's not so great, it can be a little draining, sort of working on something where you don't really love the characters and you don't really love the storylines. A novel, on the other hand, when you're writing a novel, it's just you and your keyboard, and you can write whatever you want. So you can write whatever characters you want, whatever storylines you want. The downside of that is it's a very lonely process. It's just you. There's no one else really to talk to until your editor or your publisher gets involved. So yeah, there's pros and cons with both.
So do you find when you're writing the novels, do you plot everything out, or do you kind of just go with the flow?
I always have the ending in mind. So I know what the ending is. And then I go back and I write everything that is that's required to get to the ending. So I guess I'm probably half and half. I've got sort of the outline of what the plot's going to be, because I know where I need to end up. And then I just go in and I just write it. And I always sort of ascribe to the mantra, don't get it right, get it written. So it's far easier just to go back and edit something that you've already written, rather than to sort of stare at a blank page and try to write out something perfect the first time. So once I know that what the ending is, then I just go back to the beginning and I just start writing, and I just keep writing until it's done. And then I go back and have a look and start the editing.
That sounds like it sounds like the idea of writing a novel sounds all very, oh, nice, I'm just going to write a novel, but it's actually a lot of hard work. So what's the best things about writing a novel, and what's the worst?
I always find the first draft is a slog. It's like exercise or something. It's really, like you said, it's a lot of work. So for example, if say a novel's 100,000 words long, and you've got you say, well, I'm going to give myself 4 months to get a first draft out. So let's say in those 4 months you might have 100 days of writing. So that means I need to write 1,000 words a day for 100 days. And to get that, and that is hard work. And some days you turn up to the computer and you think, I have got nothing left. And that's when I go back to the old mantra of don't get it right, get it written. So I just say to myself, right, you just write those 1,000 words. Don't worry about if they're rubbish. Just get them down. Because even if you've got something and it's complete rubbish, once you've sort of printed out and read it back, you go, oh, well, I didn't actually want to say exactly that, but okay, we're kind of there. We can do a little bit of editing, a little bit of rearranging, and then at least we've got a shape to start with. So that's probably the worst bit about it, and I feel like a lot of writers are the same. That first draft is very tough. The most enjoyable process is probably, I think, when you're sort of when you're ready to submit to an editor, or when you're working with an editor who really gets the book, and the editor is just sort of, they give you their notes, their feedback, and you can tell that their attitude is, we just want to make this the best that we can. And when you sort of start editing it together and pruning it back and finding out what your theme is and who your characters are and what their journeys are, and then the novel starts coming together, and then finally you see the novel, there's no better feeling.
Amazing. We've got Colleen asking a question in the chat box. What do you think of today's Australian TV drama, e.g. quality content, etc.?
Great question, Colleen. So we are at, I don't want to say we're on a precipice, but we're at a very interesting time. We've got streamers who are coming in. We've got Amazon, we've got Netflix, and we've got Stan, and we've got Binge now as well. And all of these streamers, they cost about $10 or $15 a month, and which is a fraction of what Foxtel or any type of satellite or cable TV used to be, and so they cost nothing, and they have no mandate, they have no law to produce Australian TV. So we're getting all of these really high quality TV shows from around the world, from the UK, from America, from Germany, from Spain, which costs a fraction of what it costs to make an Australian TV show. So, for example, a show like Offspring or any type of like good quality 1 hour Australian drama costs about $1 million to make. Yeah, and it's a lot, isn't it? It's a lot of money, and the TV shows that we're watching on Netflix, for example, they cost it even more to make. An American show might cost $2 or $3 or $4 or $5 million an episode to make, but we didn't pay for any of that. And so what we see is that the Australian drama viewers have gradually over the years been going down and further down. Why? Because people don't want to watch ads anymore. You think, why would I go and watch something on Australian TV that I can watch a program of similar quality on my Netflix, and I don't have to watch any ads. So it's a real shame. Because Australian TV, we've got laws which say, I think it's either 50% or 30% of your content that you produce must be Australian. Whereas Netflix and Amazon and Stan and so on and so forth, they don't have the same rule. My first novel, Jane in Love, is being turned into a movie by Amazon, by a streamer. And it's a shame. Well, I mean, it's good in a way that I'm the writer, so I'm Australian, and my the director is Australian. So we've got Australian people working on it. But if it gets shot, it won't be shot in Australia. We won't be employing Australian crew or anything. So no, it's a great question. So that was a roundabout wrong way, Colleen, of saying I think Australian drama is fabulous. We've got fabulous actors. We've got fabulous writers, we've got fabulous directors, we've got fabulous crew. We've got all the makings for telling brilliant stories. But the opportunity for telling those stories is getting less and less and less, which is very sad.
And it's interesting though, because you've got things like The Dry coming out, which is international sensation.
Yes.
So it makes, there is a market there for Australian TV, Australian drama. It's just getting it out there.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, when I every time I sort of speak to Amazon, I sort of put it to them, make more Australian stuff, because if you make it good, then there will be a global audience. Like, you will make your money back. And Netflix have started making some Australian stuff, which is great. And they do put Aussie shows on there, they do syndicate the Aussie shows on, there's Secret Life of Us is on Netflix now. Offspring's on Netflix, obviously. So yeah, we do need to keep lobbying them, and hopefully it just continues.
So with your TV writing, do you have a favorite show that you worked on, or favorite character of stories? This is so daggy, but for my first ever job was on All Saints, and I loved, I don't know if anybody's seen it, but basically the way it started was there was this doctor, can't remember what his name is, Eric something or other, great actor. And was that Eric Thompson?
Eric Thompson, yeah. Well done, yeah. There was a nurse, Nurse Terry, who was played by Georgie Parker, and she was a nun, and he was this sort of handsome, sort of swashbuckling doctor. And they sort of had this lovely Victorian style, sort of like old-fashioned sort of love affair, where they secretly loved each other for years and years and years. So I loved working on that, even though I was really young at the time, and I was just a junior in the office. But I loved that. I loved that that love story. I adored working on McLeod's Daughters. Great show. It's probably the most successful show that Australia has ever exported. You know, you can still turn on the TV in Germany and McLeod's Daughters will be on, and Offspring as well. Offspring is really, really good writing. And Nina, who is this obstetrician, who's a brilliant doctor, but her love life's a bit of a mess. She was a fabulous character to write.
Yes, she's so human.
She is. She is. No, you're right. She is. She's complex. She's so clever, but she's got this crazy family and this crazy love life, and we love seeing her try and navigate all that.
Yeah, I just remember like one scene that just kept going around in my head from that show was when she tries to do the tumble turns in the swimming pool. I'll get it tomorrow, next time. I'll nail it next time. She obviously can't do tumble turns, and maybe I just appreciated that because I can't do them either. So make sure that if you have any more questions, pop them in the chat box. I have one more thing to ask you. Would you like to read the first couple of paragraphs of your book, because I think that is really nice way to set the scene for it.
Great, I'd love to. Sorry, everyone. So what I'll do is I'll read the opening paragraph of the first chapter, and then I'll read the last paragraph of the first chapter. So this is Secrets My Father Kept by Rachel Givney. Chapter 1, Floorboards. Krakow, Poland, February 1939. As Marie prepared to break into her father's bedroom, she felt a little pool of guilt well up inside her for betraying him. Her patriarch was a respected man in town who kept to himself and attended church 8 times a week, every morning and twice on Sundays. He possessed no interests beyond the rapture of the Blessed Sacrament and studying the reproductive habits of bacteria. He did not deserve such disrespect from his only daughter. But, unfortunately, the burning desire to find something, anything, about her mother had become irrepressible for Marie, and on that Wednesday afternoon, as the rain made lovely fat spatters on the cobblestones outside, was as good a time as any to betray him. People only see what they want to see. That's what Marie's father always told her. He rarely gave out fatherly advice. This was his one dabble in cliche. If you only acknowledged the narrowest purpose of a person or object, the world was a far smaller and less interesting place. So that's the opening paragraph. So Marie is breaking into her father's bedroom, which he always locks his door. She's going to break into her father's bedroom because she's trying to find some evidence, some detail, anything about what happened to her mother. This is her mother who's been missing for 15 years, which she's trying to find. So anyway, in chapter 1, she breaks into her father's bedroom. She finds something in her father's bedroom. I won't tell you what it is, but it's a little bit disgusting, and it's a little bit gothic and creepy. This is the final paragraph. So Marie had gone into her father's bedroom hoping for some morsel of information that would have allowed her to say to the neighbours that her mother left for a virtuous reason, that they could remove the stain from Marie's character that her mother's absence had made. But now, faced with this real piece of her mother, instead of satisfying the craving to gain propriety in front of the townsfolk, she had created a new one, 100 times worse. A cave of longing had opened up inside her. She'd set a monster loose. The discovery of the thing, I won't tell you what it is, so macabre, so unexpected, changed everything. She could never go back to the way things were now. She now put aside her concern for finding the reason her mother had left and focused on actually locating her instead. If Marie Karsker knew then how much she would come to learn over that year of 1939, excuse me, she might have wished for something different. But for now, she felt confident of one thing only. She would not stop until she learned what had happened to her mother.
Wow. Yes. It's a brilliant scene. It is
Oh,
a
thanks.
brilliant scene. I was holding my breath when I was reading it as she's trying to break into that room. It's like, is she going to get caught? She's going to get caught. Something awful is going to happen. But it's kind of like that's not the relationship that the father and daughter have. They have a very trusting, a very close relationship.
They do.
Yeah, and so you can see that conflict growing in her.
Yes.
I want to know more. I really, really want to know more.
Yes.
And like, I just feel that's such a great way to keep the storyline going, is
Oh,
that
yes.
constant quest to find out more.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what Marie, and I found it as a real teenager relationship, because when you're a teenager and you're sort of becoming an adult, you're constantly having this sort of push pull with your parents. Or your guardian, or whoever is your sort of main, caregiver in the world, and you're sort of trying to find your own way, and you love them very much, but you realize that in order to become your own person and to grow up, you're going to have to leave them.
Yeah. I don't want to say too much because
Okay.
I feel like I'm going to give it away,
Yeah.
and I don't want to give it away. So for those people who haven't read the book, I highly recommend it. It is very, very great, very well written, I feel. I really enjoyed it. I finished it on the weekend. So if you haven't read it yet and you would like to, we do have copies on order for the library because it's brand new. It takes us a little while to get them through our systems, but I'll donate this one and it should be in the collection by the end of the week. And if you feel like purchasing your own book, please consider our independent booksellers on the Central Coast. I'm sure that they would love you to drop in and say hi and to find Rachel's book there. If nobody has any more questions, I think I've gone through all of my questions. Yeah, it is a very interesting book. I learned a lot about chemistry. Actually, even Marie's name has a meaning. So she's named after the Marie Curie. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
She's a Polish
So
woman. Yeah.
yeah. So there's like all those little details that go through there. So it makes it a very interesting read and really keeps you guessing right to the end. So thank you very much for joining us today. If
My
nobody else
pleasure.
has any more questions, we'll finish up there, and good luck with the rest of the book tour. I think I may.
Kathy, what's Rachel working on now?
Oh yes, what are you working on?
So at the moment, I'm writing the screenplay for Jane in Love, which is being turned into a movie. We're about sort of on the second draft of that, I guess. And then once that's finished, I will take a look at book 3.
I think so Jane in Love, I'm thinking that I kind of read a little bit about it when I was doing this, and I'm going, this sounds really familiar. I think I might have read this. And if I've got it right, if I've got the right story in my head, it's about Jane Austen in the modern world.
Yeah.
Yes. So I was thinking that it was actually already a movie, but I must have read the book. So it does lend itself very well to that movie. I think it would be some quite comical elements in that one as well too. So I look forward to seeing that one come up on Amazon when it's all done.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah, and we have that one in the collection as well too. So thank you for that question, because I did have it on my list and I almost forgot. So any more questions from anybody? No? Well, thank you. You've been very generous with your time, and I liked hearing all about the TV series and the writing industry, the inside goss that you don't really know what's going on because we just see the finished product. So thank you very much for your time today, and best wishes for the book. And we look forward to seeing more work from you in the future.
Wonderful. My absolute
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thanks, guys.